guys, our merry band has increased by 1 for this show. Over here.
Oh, hello there.
Good evening.
This is Drop the Pucks, Kate Groves.
Oh, you're our groving reporter.
That's me.
One and the same.
That's me.
But we've been covering a lot of sports over the last few weeks, haven't we? We've been to the baseball, we've been to the Cheshire Phoenix, we've been to American football, met the Nighthawks. There was one sport that we haven't covered on podcasts, we haven't covered it on Drop the Puck, obviously, or any of our other shows, and that's roller derby.
It certainly is. What an afternoon we had at Greenbank. It was a fabulous afternoon. Thanks very much for the Liverpool Roller Derby girls for inviting us down for the day. It was an interesting learning experience to learn about this new sport, and I did a report on it for us.
What did you know about roller derby going into it?
Extremely little, but I learned quite a lot. I learned you've got to be very, very physical. You've got to be physically fit. These girls, came in, got changed, came out, looked the part, and it was such a physical and fast game. You know, sometimes my eyes were going cross because they were going that fast around this rink. It was just unbelievable, and the crowd there, it really made it such a good afternoon. And
really big crowds as well. I was surprised at how many people turn up to it. Because it's something you don't really know about, and then there's such a big following for it.
What was interesting was the team that had come down to play Liverpool this time was Dundee, and their travelling support had come down as well. So it's a big journey for an afternoon for an amateur sport and a considerably minority sport. However, we did find out in the afternoon that it is growing, not just for the females but for the males as well. We said hello to the Liverpool male captain, and he has a lot to do with the refereeing and officiating of the game, and just a very educational afternoon as well as an enjoyable afternoon to see this new sport.
Well, let's take a look at the interviews and see who you met.
Enjoy.
Roller derby is a sport that started in the 1930s in Chicago in the U.S. It was originally like World Wrestling Federation with lots of staged bouts and excessive amounts of violence, but it's since evolved into a really serious sport that is even getting support for maybe an Olympic bid in the future.
And why did you choose roller derby?
Well, I was actually convinced to join by a friend of mine after I'd moved here to the UK, and I didn't really have very many friends, and we didn't really have a lot to do with my time. And she'd said, why don't we just join a roller derby team? And I hadn't been on my roller skates in about 20 years and was a little nervous about it, but it was amazingly fun, and I instantly made lots of friends by joining the team.
So speaking of team, I do believe you have an alter ego on the when you put your skates on. Can you tell me about your roller derby name, please?
Right. So everyone chooses a name that sort of reflects something about themselves. And my name is Califloria because I'm originally from California, and I'm known as a little bit of a blocker that can Floria.
Tell me about this setup here at Liverpool.
Well, we have two different teams. We have the A team, the Sisters of Mersey, and we have the B team, which is the Yellow Submarines. All of our icons and logos always have something to do with the city because we really are proud of the city and we're proud of our participation in the things that the city does. So we really keep that part of our community in our logos. And
sticking with that community aspect, I noticed there's a Macmillan Cancer stand here today. I believe that you've got a close link with that charity.
Yes, every year we choose one partner within the community to partner with for charity purposes. And this year we chose Macmillan Cancer Support, and that is because many of our skaters have been affected by cancer, either with their relatives or a personal family member. And plus Macmillan is very, very active within the local community, and we really support community charities that are quite active in the community.
How do you approach new players to join the team?
Well, we're always recruiting, so we try to get out into the community and have a presence. So we'll be at events where, like the Smithdown Street Fair, we had people out handing out flyers and stuff at a table there. We try to get out within the community at all different kinds of events like that. We'll be participating in the very big catwalk on July 4th, which is going to happen down in L1, and it should be really exciting. We'll be on skates on the catwalk, and just we try to recruit whenever we can. generally people are really interested in it because it's an exciting sport.
This is Steph here from the roller girls team.
Hi.
Steph, can you tell us about roller derby, please?
Yeah, roller derby is a really fast-paced sport. It's basically a contact sport on roller skates, and it's just really good fun to play.
And we're speaking to you before the bout today. Can you tell us about your opponents, Dundee?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about them, to be honest. I've only seen one game that they've played in, so I am slightly fearful, but I think we can probably do this. I've got confidence in us.
And why did you choose roller derby as a sport when there's so many other sports out there?
Well, to be honest, when I was at school, I never was in a team or anything like that. I was never very sporty. I just didn't find anything that really appealed to me. And then I started skating and I just found it really enjoyable. The teamwork is amazing. It's just really good to be part of a team, and I just love my team and love the game and like the violence, I guess.
Speaking of the violence, what role do you play in that team? Have you got a specific position you play?
Yes, I play jammer, so that makes me the point scorer. So I wear a helmet panty cover with a star on it, and I basically have to get past the opposing team, and each member of the opposing team that I pass, I get a point for.
And your alter ego on the when you put your skates on, what is your name on the rink?
My name's Tinkerhell, but Tink for short, or Stink. They call me Stink quite a lot as well.
I'm guessing there's a lot of camaraderie between the teams.
Yeah, I think there has to be, because we all rely on each other at the end of the day. I might be the jammer, but I'm not on my own out there. I couldn't do what I do without the help of my team, so yeah, there has to be a lot.
Roller derby is a really fast, exciting sport that when I started, I couldn't actually stand up on skates. So basically anybody can do it. You don't need to be able to roller skate before you start. It's a game of strategy, a game of offence, a game of defence. It's really fast moving. You have to think really quickly. You have to be really, really in tune with your team members to know what each other's doing. You almost have to mind read. It's fascinating, and I just love it.
You've got quite a responsibility in the league. You're a board chair. What does that role involve?
It involves keeping everything together, to be honest, because as you can imagine, a group of almost 100 women could be potentially chaotic, but it's not. We're fairly well organised. We've got a very good team structure, decision-making structure. We've got various committees, clear roles set out, and it's voluntary, so everybody has to play their part. In order to do that, we just really need to be quite organised. We need to communicate well. We need to not get upset if things don't get done. As volunteers, you can only do what you can only do. But at the end of the day, if we don't all pull together, you wouldn't have a day like we've got today, where we've got a really, really amazing bout, which is a British Champs game.
Speaking to some of your team members earlier on, I believe you have an alter ego once you put your skates on. Can you talk to me about your character, please?
Yeah, we do. Well, my name's Adrienne. When I grew up, because I'm a bit of an ageing roller bird, the Rocky films were quite famous. And of course, Rocky's wife was Adrienne. So it was a fairly obvious choice for my skate name to be Rocky. But instead of Rocky Balboa, because I'm a bit of a wimp in real terms, I'm Rocky Featherboa.
Ah, very good. And what colour would your feather boa be?
It'd definitely be yellow.
Excellent.
Yellow through and through.
Excellent. Well, thank you for talking to us today. Enjoy the bouts today, and we'll hope to speak to you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the things I love about those interviews is everybody's got a character.
Yes, it was one thing that I did notice, and they've all got individual names, and I believe there is a name roster which has all these names, so nobody kind of duplicates somebody else.
Really, there's like an equity for roller derby.
Kind of, yeah. It's such a fantastic thing, and again the links with the community that they had. They're particularly passionate about Macmillan Cancer Charity this year, and a lot of donations were made to them on the day, which is great for not just the sport but for the community, and to see the involvement that people had, and local businesses came and sold. I mean, we were really disappointed that we didn't get any cakes because it all sold out by the end of the first half. I know Gary was particularly disappointed at that.
Yeah, I did sneak in. What impressed me about them though is how seriously they take it. It's I mean, they get all the makeup and they've got the design kit and stuff like that, but it's like, they have all little emblems all pasted on them, and they obviously get their number put on them. But I sort of went in with a different view on it originally, and I came out thinking it's a little bit like WWF wrestling on roller skates.
Yeah.
thinking it was going to be a lot more physical and aggressive than it was, because obviously I've seen it in the States, and I mean, they're not hammering tongues out of each other.
But as she said in the interview there, it started out as a sort of a mock sport, so to speak, about being staged, and it progressed into the real sport, which was nice to see.
On the day there was quite a big crowd cheering them on, and everybody gets well into it. It makes for a really, really good day out.
I think as well, because it's such an easy game to understand. Once you've seen it, you know how it works. Tinker Hell, who we interviewed, she was the fast player. She was the player who was overtaken to gain the points for Liverpool. And when we interviewed her, she was really, really enthusiastic and said that the positions that they play were important. And I think that brought in that camaraderie, that, look at me, I'm the one who, whips round that track. And boy, did she whip round that track.
Well, you look around, and I mean that these teams seem to be popping up everywhere now. I know we've got teams in D-side, there's teams on the Wirral as well, there's teams over in Liverpool, so it's obviously definitely a growing sport. And like you said in the interview there as well, we're getting the men involved as well, and that's nice to see.
But it's not just in the Northwest though, it's nationally.
Yeah.
And it's another one of these minority sports that doesn't really get the coverage it deserves, because it's so easy to set up as well.
Welcome to the Farnham Report. That's right, this week I've had a shave. Ooh, smooth. At least that's what Gemma tells me. Let me start off by apologising first to the Halton Spartans. I got it wrong last week. Bad information there, guys. It was in fact Manchester Titans who had 3 players ejected. The Halton Spartans were the fair team of the day, only getting 1. While we're on the Halton Spartans, of course they're their first home game of the season, first home game ever, just this weekend. I know some of the guys went down to watch it. If you went down yourself in Widnes, you saw a cracking game and a strong performance from a team showing some early promise. Halton lost last week to an experienced Titans team, but they've come back this week. They bounced back with a solid win. Carlisle travelled down with a small team, and they knew it was going to be tough. They were without their starting quarterback. They've lost him for the season, so it was really, really down to Halton to stamp their authority in the game. Early on, the games was a quite tight game. Halton scored first, Carlisle replied. Just before half-time, Halton did enough to take the lead there, and never really looked back. As the game wore on, they really started to show their authority. They showed they had the bigger team. As you can see, Alex Martin had a game of his life apparently, 143 yards. Well done. MVP, 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 I believe was the chant that rung around. But as the game wore on, the bigger squad started to really grind away. They managed to take a 20-6 lead with Alex Martin running that one in. That's a surprise. I feel like his name's going to be something we might talk about for a while. Carlisle managed to score late on to make it interesting, but it wasn't enough. Final score in that game was 33-12. So that was a really, really good day for the Halton Spartans. This means they moved to 3-1. Manchester Titans won again today, so they go to 4-0. But it really means that the Spartans are showing really good promise for a first-year team. They're still in this division, and they're going to be up there come the end of the season. They hopefully might even get a little bit of a playoff run going, which would be great for them. In the Prem North, Lancashire Wolverines were hosting the Tamworth Phoenix. This was the battle of the 2 unbeaten teams in that division, and it didn't go the way of the Lancashire Wolverines. Started off, they managed to block a punt, which was the story of the day for them, but they did manage to capitalise on the field position. It was a struggle really from there. Tamworth Phoenix made it 7-2, 14-2 then just before half-time on a pick 6. Second half saw Tamworth miss a field goal before they managed to drive down the field and actually kick a field goal this time. It was, like I said, Lancashire just didn't have enough in them. They managed to get it back to 17-10 at the end and really put up a fight towards the end. Just didn't quite have enough to get it through. It makes it interesting in the division now because Tamworth are 3-0, but it means that it's a 3-1 Lancashire Wolverines. There's also the East Kilbride Pirates who are 3-1. That's going to be a division to watch, the Prem North, so really getting interesting. Next week, your Merseyside Nighthawks, they travel down to Nottingham. They're playing against the Caesars down there. They really need to capitalise. Gateshead lost this weekend, so it's a big chance for the Nighthawks to stamp their authority on that division and really put the pressure on the other teams. And Chester are in their first relegation battle of the season as they travel to Shropshire Revolution now. Between them and Shropshire, the grand total of wins this year so far? 0. One of those teams has to win. One of those teams is certainly going to be feeling a lot better come the end of that game, so that'll be an interesting one. Across the pond, baseball season's reached its quarter mark, so it's going to be an interesting one as we go along. And it's been a while, but we haven't had a who's on first for ages, so let me just run through it for you. In the AL East, it's Tampa over the Yankees. They're fighting it out with just a couple of games between them. The AL Central, last year's World Series losers, Kansas, lead the way. They're just a couple of games ahead, though, of Detroit, with Minnesota just a few games back from there. AL West, you get to see the biggest surprise in baseball with the best record in baseball as we stand right now. That's the Houston Astros. They're leading that division. NL East, Washington Nationals and the New York Mets. Mets having a good season there. NL Central, go St. Louis, go Cards. They're leading that division by a couple of games over the Chicago Cubs. And in the NL West, you've got the Dodgers and the Giants battling it out at the top. Hockey's on. Basketball's on. Check your listings. There's some great games on this weekend. Farnham Report.
I suppose the thing with roller derby is what it is. It's a great avenue for women to get into sport, and we are approaching sort of a golden age, I think, for women in sport. You know, you've got great leagues for American football, hockey. You know, the women's gold medal game is on up with the men's and gets just as many views. The women's NBA. Is this a golden age for women playing North American sport?
No, I don't think we are in a golden age for women's sports. I think we are where we have always been with women's sports.
Has somebody got an itch to scratch?
An itch to scratch? Maybe I've spotted something. In left field. Sitting up here in left field, I'm having a real hard time thinking that I'm still sat in the 21st century when I see how women are being portrayed and represented in organised sports. If you want a visual representation of what I'm talking about, viewers at home, get out your phone or your tablet and do a quick Google image search for Danica Patrick. Now, do a Google image search for any other IndyCar driver. Do you notice any difference there in how these professional sportsmen are portrayed? I think you might. For another comparison, let's look at organised football. This is the Lingerie Football League. They're out there in the bra and knickers, shoulder pads on, playing a competitive physical sport. Now, the competitors are no joke in this. I've got no criticisms for them. They're clearly talented athletes. The problem for me is the requirement that they've got to ply their trade in their underpants. For a professional or organised sport, there's this expectation built in that the female athletes not only need to play this sport, they've got to be sexually appealing to the male audience while they do it. Secondly, this representation of women, in my opinion, creates an additional barrier to women getting involved in sports. Not only have you got to have the requisite skill, the determination, the training that your male counterparts have got to add, you've also got to fit a certain mould, you've got to look a certain way, and you've got to be willing for that to be pushed to the hilt for you to make it as successfully in the sports arena. Now, when you do that, when you're treating a group differently from another group, to achieve the same ends, there's a word for that, and that's called discrimination, and I don't think that can be denied. Now, the common justification given for this discrimination in sports with women is that it's necessary to appeal to an audience for women's sport. Men, despite occasional evidence to the contrary, are not as base and stupid as you think they are. Men will quite happily watch women's sport just for the singular pleasure of seeing a game played well or something done by skilled competitors at the highest level. If you don't believe me, here's an example for you. The biggest draw in competitive mixed martial arts on the planet at this moment in time is Ronda Rousey. Female MMA fighter. She's made it in probably the most masculine of all the sports. She's a hell of a fighter. Bouts are excellent, and when she's competing in the ring, she's wearing nothing that isn't utilitarian and functional. She is drawing the big money in that sport from a predominantly male audience because of her ability. Things are better than they were, certainly, but they are not as good as they could be, and they are certainly not as equal as they should be.
I must point out, though, the LFL, as it is, the Lingerie Football League as it was, is now, they've changed the name because they've obviously pinpointed the point of lingerie being the attraction for certain people. So I think to sell it to the masses when they were taking it abroad, because they tried to take it into Australia and make it set up a league there, I believe that they changed it to Legends Football League now.
Did they change the game attire?
Unfortunately, no.
I've seen a few games and I've watched it alongside arena football, because it is essentially just women's arena football.
Yeah.
And the skill level is identical.
Well, dare I say
From the AFL and the LFL, there isn't all that much difference.
I've actually got a few friends on a social media page which play for the LFL teams, and it is the amount of training and time they put and dedication they put into being a competitor in that, and it's quite serious, because they have tryouts like any American football team would, and people don't make the grade. But it's not necessarily that they have to have certain attributes to fit in. They just need to be able to compete at the level that they want.
And that's rather the point I'm making. They are phenomenal athletes, but if they want to play at a high level in that sport, they've got to do it in their pants. And to imagine that from a marketing standpoint, a team is not going to pass on a good athlete because they don't look great in those in that game day attire.
I think on a positive note, I know, speaking from experience going to D-side with Drop the Puck this year, we've seen some examples of Sarah at Bradford. She's integrated very well into that team, and she was a valued member. She was treated as an equal. You know, she was the only thing different about her. She had different changing facilities. She came on with the team. She was part of the team, and the other thing that was significant about that particular game, you had 2 females running the bench, and that was it was brilliant, because you were watching them on a completely level playing field. There was no difference. There was no, there was no difference to the way they were on the bench, to the way that Lol and Bruce were on the bench for D-side.
In our league, you are allowed to have female players in your team, and they're welcomed with open arms. The only thing is welfare issues, where we have to allow for them to have separate changing rooms, which is quite obvious. I mean, they can't change with the guys now. Although I believe some of the female players just aren't bothered. They want to be one of the guys in the team. That's fine. But the integration's there. But it's just to give some women who don't want to do that integration, they want their own league.
And I think that's perfectly acceptable as well.
And we've done that.
I think as Baffert are doing, I think own league should be exactly the same as the men in every respect, which is not what the LFL is.
No.
That's
it's a little bit glorified, isn't it?
That's an entirely different promotion, looking to go for a very specific audience.
But I think in defence of why it was done, it was originally set up as a stage thing, like we were saying before with the Roller Birds. Yeah. It was something that was set up for purely a bit of fun, and it's to advertise lingerie, I think, at the time.
Yeah, but wasn't it a halftime show
for the Super Bowl? Yeah. And then it sort of excelled from that when people kind of went, I wouldn't mind having a go at that, like they do with most sports.
I think we're only a few years away from that league changing altogether.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, we are. As my point is not that things aren't getting better. I think they're getting better rather too slowly for the year 2015.